everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm just going to do a really quick demonstration on how to use a buttonhole foot, a one-step buttonhole foot on your machine. Only because I've had a few messages recently where people have had a few issues with it. And although it's meant to be super user-friendly, there are a couple of things that sometimes do happen to make it really annoying. So I just thought I'd do a quick demo on how to use a one-step buttonhole foot on your machine. I am using my Janome Atelier 6 today. All the Janome machines have very similar setups. So if you've got a Janome machine, this will still apply if you've got an automatic one-step buttonhole. The foot might look slightly different, but they are very similar and in the way that they function. If you've got a different brand of machine, just have a look at your buttonhole foot, see if it's a little bit like mine. If it's not, just look at your manual. I know that's not as good, but hopefully this video will give you some idea of a few things that can happen and a few troubleshooting things. So anyway, I hope you find this useful. Okay, so this is your buttonhole foot. Now, it goes under the machine. If you look at this bit here at the front, that bar there is the bit that clips onto the machine. So I know it's massive and chunky, but this is the only bit that you really need to sort of worry about. But I know it does look a little bit scary. So at the back, it might come like this, and then you pull this bit open to have this space here, and that's where you put the button. So mine looks a little bit bulkier because I can basically modify my buttonhole size to have a larger than the buttonhole or smaller than the buttonhole, but yours probably won't have that unless you have an Atelier. So essentially you put the button in this back bit here, and then you clamp this on top of it. And what that's done is changed this size here. So if I slide that out, I'll hold onto the button, it gets bigger. If I slide it together, it gets smaller. And that is the size of the buttonhole that it's going to make for that button. So whatever button you put in the back, make sure it's the one that you want to use, because it will basically make the buttonhole to fit the button that you put in there. So if you have an Atelier like mine, you could adjust this so you can have a larger or smaller size depending on where you want it. I'm just going to go for the standard because I want a standard buttonhole. So this bit goes at the back of the machine, so I'm going to take my foot off as you usually would, and I'm just going to clip this one underneath. Again, I want to line up that bar. Clip. Okay, once you've got that all set up and you're all threaded, on your machine you should have a little piece that's this shape that pulls down from your machine, and that has to sit in between that adjusted size of our buttonhole. So between that bit and that bit, it needs to sit in between there. You need to pull it all the way down. If we now look at our screens, I'm sorry, it will probably flash because it's trying to zoom in on a digital screen. So if I press my buttonhole function, I'm just going to do a standard buttonhole. At the top where it tells you to change the foot, it will say R for your buttonhole foot, and this little image comes up, and that is that lever to remind you to put it down. If you don't put that down, after a few seconds it will probably start flashing it or beeping at you. Now the standard width of that is going to be 5mm, and it's a 0.4mm stitch length. Oh, keep that back. So I would leave it as a standard size unless you know how to change your settings or you are happy to test it out a few times on some fabric first. But if you're in a rush and you're having to do it straight on, just leave the standard settings so that you're not going to change the size and width of your buttonhole. So let's go back to the buttonhole foot. So on my fabric, I have marked with a pin the start of my buttonhole because it's going to go backwards first. Using the guides on the foot here, I can use those little red dots and to lower my needle exactly where that pin is. So when I put that down, I can then take my pin out, and I know that that's the start. It's going to always go backwards first. So I know that I need to start it there, and then it will go back, and then it will come forwards again when it's finishing the buttonhole. So my lever is definitely down in between my buttonhole, and I'm just going to put my foot on the pedal now, and hopefully it will all work nicely. So I don't know if you heard there, but it slowed down to do the knot, and then my machine beeps at me when it's finished. Yours might not beep, but it might do that slow knotting function. And with your one-step buttonholes, it will always knot it automatically for you. So once the needle's gone down, does a few slow stitches, it should pause in the fabric or beep, and then you know it's finished. You can lift up your foot off the pedal, then press your thread cutter or take it out of the machine and cut it yourself. And that's when you know that it's finished. So there's our buttonhole. So a couple of troubleshooting issues. If your buttonhole gets halfway and it stops sometimes, or it does half of it, it doesn't go all the way back to the back bit here, and you get these little half done ones. Essentially, what you have to be careful of with a one-step buttonhole is this bit tells the computer where the start and the finish of your buttonhole is. So if this bit hits anything else, it will tell the machine that it's finished, and it will go back the other way or forwards or backwards, whichever way it's sort of hitting. It will tell the machine that oh, that's when we need to stop and turn around. So you need to be really careful that this doesn't hit anything. That's especially important when you've got really thick fabrics, because sometimes things can get really caught. So just be careful. Also, it might touch your hand. If you're sort of concentrating like this, you might accidentally touch that with your hand, and then it will tell the machine, oh, I'm done, and it will sort that out. So just don't touch this at all once it's going. Another thing is any fabric can get caught up underneath your buttonhole foot or pucker up underneath it, and it sort of creates a pinch, and again that pinch in fabric might touch this, and then it tells the machine that it's finished. So essentially with a one-step buttonhole, once you've got set up and it's in line and you're ready to go, just try not to touch anything around this area. That includes anything at the back of your machine. So if you store lots of things behind your machine, because the buttonhole foot is so long, once it's moved backwards, you don't want anything to touch the back of this machine here, otherwise it will tell the machine that it's done. So try not to touch anything around this area, and you should be onto a winner every single time. Okay, so there we have it. That's how you do an automatic one-step buttonhole. I hope you found this useful. I know it's probably very self-explanatory when you've got that, and you've probably never had problems with it, but I just thought, just in case, I'll quickly run through it for a really user-friendly video. So there's my buttonhole, and to cut them, if you want a little trick for cutting them, if you cut your buttonholes with a seam ripper, a little tip for you is to put a pin at the end there, and then you cut towards the pin. So once it reaches the pin, the blade will hit the pin and it won't slide through the rest of your buttonhole. So that's how I cut them. I always put a little pin in them, just so that you can do it a little bit quicker and you won't go all the way through your garment. Also, one other troubleshooting thing I should mention is just make sure that your bobbin and your top thread are properly threaded. If you get lots of like loose threads, check your threads first, rethread your top and your bottom thread, and then after that, if you've still got problems, check your needle, because your needle might be blunt. So yeah, I hope this video had some helpfulness to it. Even if I helped a tiny amount, I will be happy. Give this video a thumbs up if you did find it useful. Comment below if you have any questions, and I will see you again for another video very soon. Happy handmade, everyone.